Welcome to the 8 Billion Project, where we're on a mission to make an impact by discovering and sharing the purpose of every person on this planet. I'm your host, Lisa Florida. Enjoy today's episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 8 Billion Podcast. I am your host, Lisa Florida, and today we have something very special. I have two guests, which is a father and daughter duo, Mr. Dedrick and Haelee and Miss Haelee Moone. Dedrick L. Moone is the author of The Unexpected Journey, Fire and Gold. He is a philanthropist, international motivational speaker, podcast host, and single father. He loves to see others be their best selves. So his life's mission is to create a positive and fun impact, whether he is allowed. His daughter, Haelee P. Moone, is the co-author. She is also the author of The Rules of a Big Boss, a book of self-love. It is a manual for young and adult women to maximize higher self-esteem. Haelee developed an accompanying clothing and accessory line in support of both books, with features on ABC 11 News, Spectrum 1 News, Fox 34 News, WBOC 16 News, television shows, print magazines, and podcasts. Haelee's message of empowerment spans across the globe. She resides in North Carolina with her dad, Dedrick, and their dog, Oreo. So welcome, Dedrick and Haelee Moone, to the 8 Billion Podcast. It is such a pleasure to have both of you. How are you both doing?
Thank you. It's absolutely an honor to be here.
Wow.
Congratulations to both of you on the successful launch of your book. Haelee, I know you launched, was it last June 2020?
Yes.
Okay. And Dedrick, you just launched on February 21st, if I stand correct.
Yes, February 2020. Yes.
Awesome. So I have had the pleasure of actually, of course, as a podcast host, I have to do my due diligence and watch, of course, some other interviews. I know the backstory. It's also written here in both of your book, or Dedrick's book, it's written here. And then Haelee's book is a book of self-love. And I just want to tell you, Haelee, I dressed up today because I was following your exercises and I said, you know what? I'm going to dress up today on my podcast just to show Haelee I'm following the exercises and I'm going to embrace my style. And I'm going to follow everything that you have told me in the book. For someone that's 13 years old, that's amazing.
Thank you.
So I want to start off with Haelee first. Haelee, a lot of my audience probably will not know the story unless of course it is Miss Deborah Coleman who introduced me both to you guys. So hello, Deborah, if you're listening to this. Could you at least tell everyone the premise of The Rules of a Big Boss and what you hope to accomplish with this book?
So although I've heard the word premise, I'm not really sure what that means, like right off the bat. So can you just explain what that means real quick?
So of course, when I say premise, for myself, with the 8 Billion Podcast, what I say premise of this is what I hope to do. Maybe the mission is probably a better word to use.
Okay. Yeah, that. But what I hope to accomplish is to help people better their self-esteem, their self-image, self-compassion, compassion for others, things like that. So in loving yourself and things like that, you learn to do so for others as well. So that's hopefully my goal is to motivate how you treat yourself and others.
And at 13 years old, that's really a big accomplishment because for me, self-love, and that's why I'm really excited to do this interview. Self-love didn't come from me until maybe in the more recent times. And that's why I'm so, and you think about it and it's used so easily, love yourself, right? But it's not very easy. And especially when you go into your adult years, you realize how much boundaries you don't, healthy boundaries you don't put. And sometimes it compromises who you are. How did you learn about self-love at such a young age?
My dad and my dad, grandma, and my mom. Since I'm usually around my dad and my grandma a lot more often, but I do talk with my mom on the phone. Like my dad, when I was little, he used to like tell me to go look in the mirror and tell him what I saw. And I was like, I don't know. And he told me that he saw a pretty, pretty princess. And him telling me that like pretty much every day, I started to believe it. And then with my mom, she always has something positive to say. Like she's literally like a fairy. Like I always call her a fairy because she always has something positive to say. And she's just always so nice. She rarely ever says anything mean. And yeah, so she always says that I'm pretty. So she always says that I'm pretty. She tells me that she loves me and makes sure that I see myself in a positive way. And then as far as my grandma goes, my grandma always has something positive to say about me too. So she tells me that I am like worth a lot, that I was going to do great things, like especially when I go off to college, since I want to be a lawyer. She said that I would make a great one. And she always like gives me the boost of confidence that I need, not only when it comes to the present, but it's usually when it comes to the future. So she like helps me motivate myself to push towards the future. So, and like having that positive feedback in the back of my mind, I also used to watch these YouTube videos. My favorite YouTubers who I learned like some of the stuff in my book from are Tati Coakley. I love her channel so much. So much. Love Your Natural. And there's someone else I can't remember off the top of my head. But one of the biggest things that they said was like, not only like have like, okay. So one of the things that they've said that like stuck with me the most is, don't live for others, because then you're going to waste your entire life trying to please everyone around you. And then you're just going to make yourself depressed. Mm-hmm. And one thing that they said that I'm always thinking about is another thing actually, but they said, Tati Coakley said, she has said that anyone else's personal thoughts is their business. It's none of your concern. So what they think about you, that is their own personal thoughts. And that's not something that's your business to know. Just as anything that's going on in your mind, nobody else has to know. So like anyone's negative opinion or positive opinion on you is none of your business, because that's their personal thoughts. And that's something that you shouldn't worry about. So just worry about just living how you want to live your life. So I also kept that in the back of my mind too. And I used to think positively of myself, but a lot of people started to like talk down on that. And that's how I started to have like that self-hatred, and how I didn't talk really positively about myself. And I was always tearing myself down as well as others tearing me down. So all of the things that I have mentioned has helped me like have the tools that I needed to like do it myself. So overall, the people who have helped me was my parents, my grandma, and those YouTubers that I've mentioned. Mm-hmm. So I get advice from older people, but overall, I just kind of did it myself.
Right. No, it sounds like you've got a great support system, and that's really important nowadays. And it's not very common because it's so hard, like with all the different circumstances that are going on, like parents don't realize a lot of the things that you do with your child at such a young age has a huge impact in the way that they grow up. And it's great you have that support system from both of your parents. I'm a single mother myself. And, it's not that, like, for me, self-love was really hard for me to grasp the concept, because I always thought that I did love myself. But it was later down in life that I realized that, like I was saying, the boundaries you don't create. And it's not even that I grew up in an amazing family. I mean, I had amazing parents, siblings, and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes it's the outside sources like school or friends. And they don't tend to be very nice sometimes. And it makes such a huge impression on you, even growing up, even into your adult years. So it's very nice. It's very cool that you're so aware of this at such a young age. And now you're using your voice and your own experience to share that with the world. I have never met an author at 13 years old. And now I get to actually have one on my podcast. Now, Dedrick, I want to go on to you. And what I'll do is probably bounce back and forth, because I'm sure that a lot of the questions are going to, because another thing that you did, Dedrick, as Haelee's father, you wrote the book, The Unexpected Journey. Could you give us a little bit? I mean, I'd love for the audience to actually purchase it. It's a great book. If you even go on to the other podcasts, if you search them both on YouTube, they have an extraordinary story, and it's actually written out here. But I'd like for you, Dedrick, if you could just take a few moments to explain what the whole, either synopsis of this is, which I know it's not just going to be a few minutes, but the inspiration behind the book, The Unexpected Journey.
So the book, I mean, of course, you can always flip it on the back and read it. I'm not going to do that. The book is let me say this. The book is more or less part one of what will probably end up being a 3-part series. And I'll start off with what will be the conclusion. So I grew up in a single parent home, and I was raised by my grandmother. And I didn't realize that at some point in the future that I would end up becoming a single parent myself. And there are a multitude of struggles that are associated with being a single parent, as you know. And a lot of those struggles are, or some of those struggles are conveyed in Haelee's book or whatever, seeing what she went through or whatever. Her battle with, depression, anxiety, agoraphobia, things of that nature. And when she wrote the first book, she basically wrote it as a self-help manual or whatever. And, the biggest thing in her book, it's not really highlighted, and it's not highlighted on purpose, or I'm sorry, it's not highlighted. It's not a deep dive into her experiences with bullying. So her experiences with bullying aren't just the regular bullying that you see on a day-to-day basis, like name calling and things of that nature. That was definitely there, but it was much worse than that. Her bullying included sexual assault, physical assault, and attempted murder. And so the spreading of rumors and things of that nature. When she wrote her initial book, she touched upon it a little bit, but I said, no, let's take that out, because, it goes down a rabbit hole that I'm not ready for you to go down yet. I don't really think it's age appropriate for you to address those things. And I believe that it's more or less outside the context of the book or whatever. Let's save that for later. So initially, my plan was to take a deep dive into those issues later down the road. And that later down the road ended up as being a book that I'm going to write that's completely about my journey from being raised in a single parent household, becoming a single parent myself. And I said, I'll wait until Haelee is, let's say, maybe between 18 and 22 to write that book. And my plan was that, I would tell her the stories and I would let her go, and I was going to let her write it. And it would basically be my life story, as in, all the way up to where she becomes involved. It was like, I'm going to give you the beginning of the story and you're going to finish the story. So it's going to basically be like how King David gave King Solomon the construction manuals and everything to the temple. I'm going to give you, and you were going to write it. And that was going to be like, my anthology, my final gift to her as a parent or whatever. And my purpose in writing it was, to help other people, saying, you never know what a child's future is. Lo and behold, I thought that I was cursed in being a single parent. I thought that I was cursed in being raised in a single parent home, but I didn't know the plan that God had set out before me. And the plan set out before me was, I need you to be raised in a single parent home so that you will know how to be a single parent yourself. I have a plan for you 20, 30 years down the road that you can't see yet, but it will all make sense one day. Okay.
Yes, I agree.
So, Haelee dropped. So as you know, Haelee's book released on June the 25th. And my mom was well aware of, it released on June the 25th of 2020. And her book did exceptionally well. And, it's basically more or less an affirmations manual. Well, when my mom read it, she looked at it and she said, one thing that she was disappointed in was that it didn't go really deep into the bullying and the experiences and everything. And I said, Mom, that's something that I was going to save for later. I don't think Haelee's ready for me to go to tell that story yet or whatever. And I told her that my plan was to put all of that in Haelee's autobiography. Well, my mom said, well, why don't you do a micro autobiography? You need to strike while the iron is hot, and you need to go ahead and tell the rest of that story, because while the Rules of a Big Boss is a really good self-help manual, people really need to know the full story of everything that you and this child have been through. And I said, okay, let me think about it. Well, the second person, the third person told me, that's okay. That's affirmation, confirmation. Okay, fine. So I sat down with Haelee and I said, hey, you want to go ahead and tell, the rest of the story, or you want to do the deeper dive? And instead of doing our autobiography, we could just do a memoir. And that memoir will basically start off in like 2014, where all the troubles began, and it'll go up to 2021. Part 2 will be the deeper dive into that. Okay. So anyway, so the book starts off and it talks about, issues that I was encountering on my job and everything, and being in the toxic work environment. And then it picks up steam and it talks about Haelee and the experiences that she had with the bullying and everything that I expressed earlier. It goes in and it talks about, how I finally told her, all of the systems at play that was supposed to protect her just failed her. The school system, the police, juvenile services, every system that was put in place that was supposed to protect this child failed her. And, I have my own reasons why I believe that's so. I didn't really address it in the book because I want the reader to try and make their own assumptions. But I believe that part of the reason was because we were in a predominantly Caucasian Caucasian county, and we were Black. So I believe that racism played a huge factor in it, but I can neither confirm it nor deny it. It's only a feeling. So as I sat back and I made my complaints or whatever, no one believed me. They thought that I was lying. They thought that Haelee was lying. Everything was all in her head about her experiences and everything. I'm like, I have witnesses. I have proof. I have dates, witnesses, and everyone who knows what is going on, but no one is doing anything or taking things seriously. I ended up having to escalate things. It was like, okay, the school's not going to do anything, so let me take it up to the Board of Education. Take it up to the Board of Education. They did nothing. So, okay, let me take it up to the county commissioners. The county commissioners, I can't really do much of anything. My hands are tied. It's an independent school district. We recommend you go up to the state. I go up to the state and I speak with the school safety officer there. He says, independent school district, man, I empathize with you. I will do what I can, but unfortunately my hands are tied. Go up from there. And I said, okay, let me escalate things to my church and to my congressman. So I escalated things to the late, great Elijah Cummings. He did what he could, but unfortunately, he really didn't have much pull or anything within the state. And also the former Congressman Donna Edwards. She really couldn't do much of anything. And all the while, I see my child suffering, and she's developed agoraphobia, anxiety, agoraphobia, school phobia, anxiety, and she's suicidal. And I'm fearful of losing my daughter. And I'm like, up here where we live, it's just her and I don't have any family here. It's just her and I. She's the only family that I have. And my daughter sees me suffering, and her fear is by seeing me suffer and seeing how much it does to me, she felt like it would be easier for me if she would have killed herself. And I said, oh my God, no. And I am just going through, she's going through. And I finally take a stab in the dark and I said, if no one else can help me, I'm going to go to the highest person in the land. Let me contact the Department of Justice and let me contact President Obama. Contacted President Obama, told him what was going on, and he said, no, this should not be happening. Something else had to be done. So President Obama responded, wrote us a letter. It's in, I think, Appendix 7 or 8 of the book, a copy of the letter. And then he also sent our complaint down to the U.S. Department of Education and had the U.S. Department of Education open up a Office of Civil Rights complaint against the school district. And they launched an investigation and everything. And once all of that was done, now the Board of Education wanted to listen to me. Now the school board wants to take the issues that we brought about seriously, everything, and so on and so forth. And it never should have gotten to this. Mm-hmm. It also goes into telling my daughter at some point, I've done everything that I can to protect you. You have to protect yourself at some point. And, protecting yourself, you're going to have to fight back because these systems that are supposed to protect you just aren't going to do it. Because I told my daughter to go fight back and she fought back to protect herself, I ended up getting charged with second-degree assault on a minor when I never even touched the child. All I did was sat there and watch the fight happen. And I watched the fight happen to give my daughter the confidence that I am not going to let her hurt you. And it goes into the legal troubles and everything that I went through by simply telling my daughter to protect herself and hire the most expensive and the top criminal attorney in the state and all of the battles and everything that came with that. And it goes on to say, with everything, we went through the fire. That's why we chose the subtitle, Fire and Gold. But despite us going through the fire, something good came out of it. And that something good is what we're doing right here, sitting here talking to you. She and I are both normal. Despite our circumstances, we were made to be broken. The devil threw every fiery dart that he could at us to try and break us, but he never broke us. We survived, we persevered, and we're using our stories to help other people press forward and to try and help them say, see, joy comes on the other side. There's a rainbow after every storm. Fires do hurt. A fire can either burn you or a fire can light your path. Absolutely. The fire that we thought was meant to burn us, it didn't burn us. It just lit our path. And our path lit by this conversation that we're having with you today.
Absolutely. It has made both of you guys phoenixes, right? From the ashes. No, that is, and I know that we probably, what you were doing, it was giving a summary of what the unexpected journey was about. And I'm glad that you elaborated on it because at the end of the book, it actually says that it hasn't been, the appeal is still unsettled. And is that the current situation at this moment, Dedrick?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then another thing that maybe the audience doesn't know, and so Haelee actually released this book. It serves as a mission for self-love, but there's a background story of being bullied. And I know the story because of some of the other podcast interviews that I had watched of you guys. So there was an actual incident that actually broke out where Haelee was bullied and she was beaten. Is that correct?
Yes.
By a school, someone from school. And then there was another incident where there was a second, where unfortunately the advice was and it was not the unfortunate advice. The only way that this could be settled was if Haelee defended herself, because that was the advice that was given, correct, Dedrick?
Yes. And to be specific, there were actually, it's not written in the book, but I know it. I have the documentation. There are actually 21 incidents over a 1.5 year period of different things that occurred to Haelee. So that, that helps you understand the true magnitude of things. 21 incidents of sexual assault, physical assaults, attempted murder, and everything. Gave it all to juveniles. Didn't give it to juvenile services. Gave it to the police, made reports to the police, but the police did absolutely nothing. I understand why that is so now. And the issue was because of the age of the children. Haelee was only 7 at the time, and the other child was 6. And the police just don't have the resources to handle issues of that magnitude with children that young. Also reported into social services. Social services, as far as I know, they may have investigated, they may not have. I can't say whether they did or not. And that information wouldn't have been released to me because of the age of the children, them being minors. But what the police should have done is they actually should have taken my reports and forwarded it over to juvenile services. Juvenile services was equipped and did have the resources to handle the issue, but the police dropped the ball on that. The school system dropped the ball on that. And my mom, being the LCSW, she was a whole nother 2 states away. So the state laws in one state versus in another are completely different. And she told me that, juvenile services isn't going to do anything. The police, as you see, aren't going to do anything. No one is going to do anything. So Haelee is going to have to fight back. And I found out after I was charged with 2nd-degree assault that juvenile services would have stepped in, and that all I had to do was make the report to juvenile services myself, or the police or the school system should have forwarded the complaint over. And unfortunately, I didn't know. I just went off with the information that my mother told me. And I was like, of course I would trust her. She's been practicing social work since 1983 at that time. So we're talking over 30 years, 33 years. Of course I would think that my mom knew what she was talking about. She absolutely knew what she was talking about in Maryland, North Carolina, but she didn't know what she was talking about where we lived. And unfortunately, that got us in trouble, that created the downward spiral for me. But it's fine because I needed all of that to happen because there was a blessing on the end.
No, absolutely. It all like what you were saying earlier. And I've been saying this when I hear so many stories on 8 billion is sometimes you don't understand until you get further is where you can connect the dots. But in the middle of it, in the midst of being under so much fire and everything is happening, I can only imagine Dedrick, I'm telling you, I'm a single mom myself to a 16-year-old son. And there were times in junior high, he was going through some stuff. And it absolutely pains you. You know what I mean? Because you rather be the one that doesn't live.
Yes.
If that's the case, right? Because you're like, and I told my son too, I said, you are only scratching the surface of life. You have no clue what life you have ahead of you. And you want to you know what I mean? And unfortunately, we deal with a lot of suicide today because there's mental health issues. And that's why it's amazing. Now I even understand maybe why Haelee has the inspiration to go out there and become an attorney one day. I think you're going to make an amazing attorney one day, Haelee. And I think by all means, you should lead the way in this, because I have a feeling I know what practice you're going to go into. It's and who knows, Dedrick, maybe that was what would lead her to become an attorney, was all of this stuff that happened.
I think so. And her watching me in court, having to fight the battles. And, and it's funny because it's like I left quite a bit out of the book. It was at least 2 chapters out of the book that things currently stand, there are at least 2 chapters that I left out of the book, and I left them out because of brevity. And I was like, I just didn't want to go down that rabbit hole. And I was like, oh man, I wanted to get it out before my birthday and in advance of my birthday. And I said, if I keep these 2 chapters in, I'm not going to get it out before my birthday. But once I got past the criminal events and everything, the other family got mad. They just wanted to do everything that they could to make our life a living hell. And they decided that they were going to take us, Haelee and I, to civil court. And they wanted to sue me and everything for damages and this, that, and the third. And we had to go to civil court, had to pull Haelee out of school and everything. And they are just assaulting this child on the witness stand, tearing her down. My attorney was a criminal defense attorney, but he wasn't a civil attorney. The civil things I had to handle on my own. And Haelee watched me go in the courtroom and tear them apart in the civil court, picked everything they said apart. And it was very simple for me to do because like I have evidence. The burden of proof was on you all. And they were trying to twist things around and say, oh, Haelee's a bully and that I'm a criminal and that they actually accused me of helping Haelee beat up their child. I'm like, come on, that doesn't even make sense. I don't even have so much as a speeding ticket. I have a clean criminal record. Never really been outside the country. If someone could be squeaky clean, it's me. Yeah. Work for the government, have the highest security clearances you could possibly have. It doesn't make sense what you guys are saying. So in and out of court, just one thing after the next. They dragged us in and out of civil court, I want to say about a good 3 or 4 times. And every time we went, I defeated them. And Haelee sat there and she watched the whole thing. And it was funny because all this stuff, everything that I said came back to bite me in the end. I ended up losing my job and everything simply because I made the decision to protect my child and to move her away. And I moved her away because in the process of fighting what was going on with her, I made a lot of enemies in the state. I made an enemy out of the police captain. I made an enemy out of the state's attorney, made enemies within the school system and everything because I chose to take a stand for my daughter. And had I chosen not to move her and I away, we would have had hell and things wouldn't have gotten any better. So we had to move away for her sake, at least. And my job said that I moved away without permission, despite me notifying them that I moved. They made a mistake in payroll and they never changed my pay rate in accordance with where we moved. And I thought that they didn't do it because it was supposed to have been that way. Well, several years later, they found out and they decided to lay me off simply because I made the decision to protect my daughter. And despite them knowing what was going on with her. So I'm fighting a civil suit against them now. And it's still ongoing. And that's the part that's left untold.
Oh, that's the part you left untold. Okay.
It all plays out. I will do a version 2 of the book where I will go ahead and I will tell what finally came out of it. And I will probably include those 2 chapters that she and I left out as well.
Wow. So not only are you going to criminal court, you are going through civil and you're doing civil by yourself. Like, yeah. I mean, I know you're a very intelligent man, but I mean, even just the emotional wherewithal to go in there and represent yourself in a civil, and then you've lost your job, you know what I mean? And it's just literally you and Haelee together. I mean, you really have been through the fire. And I commend you both for actually telling your story and doing it in such a loving and healthy way where you really are just telling your story. And the podcasting world is an amazing way to get your story out because it really is like boots on ground. Podcasters are amazing, right? Because sometimes it's going to be harder to get on television. And I'm glad that you actually reached out to President Obama. Now, Going back to that, one question that I did, and I didn't want to interrupt you. Did you tell the whole stuff? How were you able to get his attention? Like, did you write a long manuscript or...
Because I just want to be...
I probably didn't get there in the book. It probably is explained in there.
The appendix. I just want to see which appendix it is. Give me one quick second and I'll tell you.
Yeah, I've got to make note of that.
Appendix 6. But the way I got President Obama's attention is, back up just for a moment. So our story was all over the local news. Everyone literally knew about it, but no one was doing anything. So Haelee and I had been on ABC News. We had been on the newspaper, and our story was just out there. But unfortunately, as I said, no one was doing anything. And unfortunately, they couldn't do much of anything because of an independent school district. And this independent school district was is known as the best school district in the entire state. So with that being said, and it being the best school district in the entire state, talking to, reporters and politicians, they don't believe you. They're like, no way this is going on or whatever. And I'm like, yes, way it's going on. Here's the proof or whatever. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to call up to the White House. And so I called. And when I called up to the White House, I explained the situation. I explained that, hey, I've talked to the congressman. I've spoken to the the mayor of the city. I've spoken to the state officials. I've spoken to everyone. No one is willing to help me. I need President Obama to help me. How can I get him to help me? So I hear your story, write him a letter. This is what you said. This is where you send it to. So I said, okay. And I sent him the letter. And I want to say it was on, without going back and looking, I believe it was December the 5th. Mm-hmm. And he responded back pretty fast within about 3 weeks' time. And that's when business really picked up my writing that letter. And it was just a one-page letter that I wrote to him. And yeah, he responded back with a one-pager. He emailed it to me. And I want to say maybe about a week later, I received a letter from the U.S. Department of Education, let me know that, hey, they received our letter from President Obama. I'm sorry, that President Obama wrote them and told them that, hey, my daughter was going on, that this was going on with my daughter, and told them to launch an investigation. And they were following up with me to launch that investigation. So that's how everything ended up working out. So it was just a phone call and a letter.
Wow, I'm still in utter shock that, like it made mainstream media. You've reached out to congressmen and nothing. I mean, like, yes, people are aware, but they weren't doing anything. Would you say, Dedrick, is it just because they didn't want to get involved? It's kind of like almost everyone turned a blind eye.
Yeah. And I believe that, it was people did. And the big thing is, I forgot to say this earlier when I was saying I believe that race played a factor in it, but age too. The story sounds very far-fetched when you're talking about 7-year-olds and 6-year-olds. I personally wouldn't have believed it. If I was sitting here and I was a listener, I'd be like, yeah, right, they're full of crap. I wouldn't believe my own story if I didn't live it. And I believe that came into play, saying kids this young, no way. Is a 6-year-old trying to sexually assault a 7-year-old. And no way is this going on in the best school district in the county. There's no way. I'm sorry, not in the county, in the state. There's no way all of this is going on. Thank goodness that President Obama believed me and that he listened and took action where no one else would. Had he not taken action, I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Grace McComas, but that's one to look up. She was sexually assaulted in the same county. She was about 16 years old, and the boy that sexually assaulted her, let me not say sexually assaulted, let me just say what it was. She was raped. And the boy that raped her was well connected. I believe his dad or grandfather or someone was like friends with the sheriff or something like that. Her mother and her father reported it and nothing was done. Grace was actually treated like the villain in the story as opposed to the victim in the story. She ended up getting bullied relentlessly, and there was a cyber campaign launched against her to vilify her. And Grace ended up killing herself, 16 years old on Easter. And I'm good friends with Grace's mother. And I talked to Grace's mother, and she said to me, Dedrick, you really have to get a handle on this, because if you don't, she could end up becoming just like my daughter. And that's my fear. I don't want to see anyone else do the same thing that my daughter did to herself. So her family helped provide a bunch of emotional support and everything. And there's actually a law. I know it's in Maryland, and I know at one point Congress was taking it up to consider it nationwide. But there's a law in Maryland that's established in Grace's honor that's against bullying and cyberbullying, and it's called Grace's Law. And it is to protect children so that no one else so that no one else does, or not, this is not allowed again. So it protects children against cyberbullying and sexual assault and things of that nature. And it's supposed to be the strongest law in the state, in all 50 states, which is why Congress was working on it and tried to adopt it and implement it across the all the states. I don't know how far they got with that. But that was my big fear, that, you know, I've only got one gift in life, and that one gift is my daughter. And my fear was, God, if you take that away from me, or if you take, God, if you let that be taken away from me, you may as well take me too, because I won't have anything left. And that's the one thing that will break me. And that's the one thing that I cannot have. Despite everything else that happened in the book or whatever that I wrote about, I came back from it all. None of it broke me. But that right there, that will officially break me and will devastate me. And that was my big fear when I laid awake, worried about every night that I was going to lose my daughter.
Oh my gosh, Dedrick, I'm absolutely speechless from a single mother also. And it doesn't matter, because as a single parent, that's what you live for, is your children. Like it's been me and my son for 16 years. It's your life. You will go through fire. Like you will put yourself through everything before you lose that child. And and I commend you so much, Dedrick, for everything you've been through, as well as you, Haelee, and for even just having the courage to come here and share your story. And the most amazing thing is, you both are two loving, amazing human beings. You know, that becomes the basis upon everything. Like you're not, you know what I mean? Like it's unfortunate you had to go through that, but you guys came out even better people. And you guys are not doing it in a violent way. You're going through the systems at which they tell you that you need to go through, given the runaround, no one listens. But I'm telling you, here on 8 billion, you guys have a voice. And if I need to advocate for you, you have my 110 support. And it's stories like this that are important to me to actually put on the podcast, because the awareness needs to be, you know, out there. And I'm glad that you guys have made mainstream media news. I'm just really, it saddens me that nothing has really been done. The biggest thing you could do, Dedrick, of course, is be the best support system to Haelee. And now, Haelee, let me ask you, when you're going through all of that, like the depression and like what are, you know, I hate to bring you back to that energetic level, but how did you rise above it? Like, are these the exercises that you put in here, sweetie? Like, these are the little things that kind of get you through, and then watching the YouTube channels, right?
Yes. Like one big thing that I think helped a lot is I stopped like pressuring myself, and I stopped just thinking about anything overall. I just thought about like alone time. Like my mind was always just driven to alone time, and it still is, but it's just, I just want to be alone just for no reason. But then I just needed to be. So I just took time to myself. I just focused on God and my religion and things like that. So I just focused on him, and that's all I thought about. And I thought about that for a few weeks before I really decided, okay, now I really have the motivation to start to love myself and go on my journey. So I started watching those YouTube channels a lot more than I already did before. I started actually listening to the positivity and start to block out the negativity. And a way that I would do that is as it's mentioned in my book, I'm gonna try not to reveal too much of what's in it, but the nice bubble baths. My favorite is the mango one. They smell so good. And lighting candles and just relaxing, listening to music. My dad can tell you that I will listen to music 24 hours a day.
Very healing.
Doing my homework, music is playing in the background. I don't know if he hears it, but I'm listening to music all the time. There's never a time when I'm not listening to it. So when I would just be in my room, just listening to music, I would get dressed up for no reason, and I would just talk positively about myself. So those two things that I mentioned, like just not focusing on anything but the thing that meant the most, and then started to focus on the little things over time. And then that led up to like focusing on the big things.
No, I commend you so much, Haelee, for the strength and courage that you had. And I went through a very dark period myself. And sometimes you have to kind of close yourself off to the world a little bit to find the light inside you first. And that becomes the light inside you and in conjunction with God, because that's where it all starts. Because once everything inside of you is solid, nothing else around you can affect you. And you guys are amazing father and daughter team. And Dedrick, I could see like the emotion, like honestly, like my heart really goes out to you. And I could tell the depths of how much you love your daughter. And it's the same for any parent. Like I love my son. I would rather go through the fire and know that like I'm standing behind him, or beside him all the way through before I would ever lose him. And I'm just saying, Haelee, like always just trust in God, and they will, I'm sure he's the one that's been guiding you. You are still in the middle of this story, Dedrick. So I know that I know that you guys have some other, schedules, and we have a certain time frame, Dedrick, but, with the last probably 10 minutes that we have here, because I know you've got to go, let us know, one, like how we can support you, exactly where you are, how we can continue to support you. And I'd actually love to do a follow-up, because I'd love to kind of see where you guys are in a few months' time, if there's any developments from this, and continue to share your story.
I would absolutely love to do that. I can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. So on Facebook, my author page is, you just type in my first last name, I'll come up. I'm public. But the link is, my handle is at dmoone78 on Facebook.
Okay. Are you on Instagram? I tried looking for you guys on Instagram.
On Instagram, I am dmoone78. And on Clubhouse, I am just dmoone. And on Twitter, I'm at dmoone78. So it's easier to find Haelee than it is me. On Haelee, if you just go to her page, if you just go to the Rules of a Big Boss webpage,
okay,
it's the links to all of her social media at the top and the bottom. If you just click on like the YouTube or whatever, it'll take you right to her. Me, I'm more difficult to find because I'm on the back end of things, so I didn't include mine intentionally, because I really don't want to be the star of the show. She's the star of the show, and as you see, as we're sitting here telling the stories, I'm more broken up than she is. She's a strong one. I'm not. So I was like, she's the front. This is more her story. I consider myself a bit character in the story. But yes, I'm definitely on all of the forms of social media. The easiest way to find me is dmoone78. And if it's not dmoone78, it's just dmoone.
And and for the audience, it's dmoone, Moone at the end. Yes. So don't forget the E, everyone, because you definitely won't find Dedrick. But what I will go ahead and do is, of course, this is going to be on Apple and Spotify, and I have other platforms. But however, if you guys actually watch this full interview, you can see it on YouTube, and in the description box, I'll have all of their contact information, links to their books, any ways to contact them and support them. You have an absolutely extraordinary story. I know, like I said, I will continue to pray for you and advocate for you both in your story. Make sure at least you're on the West Coast. I hope to have an international audience, and one day, hopefully it's going to be 8 billion people. So they will know your story for sure. And like I said, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for even coming on here, having the courage to share it. I know it's deeply emotional for you, Dedrick, from one parent to another. And like I said, everyone, if you get a chance, please get The Rules of a Big Boss by Haelee Moone. It's a book of self-love. And then, of course, The Unexpected Journey, Fire and Gold by Dedrick L. Moone, both found on Amazon, correct? And on your websites, because that's where I bought it.
Yeah, they can actually find them on in all the major bookstores too. You can find it on Books A Million, Barnes and Noble. And okay, let me start back up for a second. If you want a signed copy, it's best to go to our website. If you want an unsigned copy, you can find them at Amazon, Books A Million, Powell's Bookstore in Oregon, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble. So it's in Haelee's book, even in Walmart too.
Wow, that's amazing for you guys. Haelee, this is just going to be the beginning of an amazing, beautiful life. I mean, of course, I know that everything has to get settled, Haelee, but I absolutely wish you all the best with so much love on your journey. And what I did receive, I just wanted to show you guys.
Yeah,
Rules of the Big Boss. So everyone, I'm converting my third room into an office, and I'm going to hang this in that room because I'm always going to remember Haelee and Dedrick's journey. And will always serve as a reminder to me. But this is not going to be the only interview, guys. So I hope to have you back soon. And maybe we could do a fashion show, Haelee. Or maybe we could do a beauty YouTube channel together.
I love it.
Because I do plan one of those. So if I ever have a channel that's centered around that, I'll think about it.
Yes, please think of me, or at least invite me or send me the link so then I could share it with my audience. But thank you both deeply from the bottom of my heart again for sharing your story. And like I said, I'm wishing you the best. I will continue to follow your story, support it, and then of course share it with my audience. And maybe in a few months, and I'll stay in touch with you, Dedrick and Haelee. Check on you, and feel free to ever reach out if you need my support in any way, or my voice, or the platform that I have.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Lisa.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If it's moved you in any way, please review and share your thoughts, or text me your thoughts at 949-247-2800.